Okay, so it's funny. So I get a lot of pushback. There's a lot of conversations going on behind the scenes with experts that I'm in constant consultation with, the research that I'm doing myself, and etc. And so I just wanted to share with you guys today, like a really pragmatic piece that really helps us understand the importance of proper nutrition in our ability to manage systemic inflammation and therefore just about every chronic degenerative disease, including the aging process. So, when you can sort of acknowledge that there are few sources of inflammation, few primary sources, mitochondrial dysfunction being one of them, and the inappropriate overactivation of immune system and mast cells in previous videos that we released. Or then you could look at what I wanted to talk about today is your intestines, really looking at your intestines and understanding their role in your ability to manage this one of the primary sources of systemic inflammation, to stop that from happening. Like, medicine is super important, right? The sweet fern, the gobag, and just like everybody's going crazy for this. But what we have to understand is that, what something really funny is that if you have inflammatory bowel disease that is autoimmune, like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, one of the standards of care in a more researched GI specialist is going to understand how important a low residue diet is going to be. What is a low residue diet? It's a diet that you would use that has the least amount of residue going through your large intestine. Because if you have ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, you have these ulcerations inside of your intestines. And if you introduce a bunch of fiber to that, like fiber from plants, that lettuce is going to come by, those tomatoes are going to come by, and they're going to be scratching that ulcer and reopening it, constantly aggravating it. It's going to be sandpaper on a paper cut, and sort of situation happening all throughout your intestines. And so if you remove all of that fiber and start utilizing a low residue diet, then there's less bulk, there's less damaging toxins, contraindicated nutrients like fiber going through your intestines to be scratching and aggravating this issue. And so you could look at study after study after study of utilizing a low residue diet in the maintenance of remission, but also in the achievement of remission with people with ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, autoimmune driven diseases affecting the intestines. And so, for everybody who's always like, why is he, you know what a low residue diet is? A low residue diet is a diet that has no plants in it, and the plants that you're allowed to eat have the least amount of fiber in them as possible. And so what you're left doing is you're eating exclusively animal products, the meat and fat of animals. And after a week, maybe even multiple weeks of engaging in this low residue diet, there is the achievement of, and then if continued afterwards, the maintenance of remission from autoimmune diseases like Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. So, like, what the heck? Why don't we just do that every day? What we're taught is, like, once you've achieved remission and you're maintaining steady levels of inflammation inside of your body, and then you could start reintroducing plants. Why do we have to start reintroducing plants, though? Why don't we just keep eating this way like we have for hundreds of thousands of years? And so, yeah. So, you know what? I just wanted to share with everybody. This seems like such a far-fetched idea. Eating a diet that consists exclusively of animal products, that must be something really dramatic and really devastating. Well, you know what? This really dramatic and devastating thing is becoming standard of care in the form of a low residue diet. So maybe we're going to start to see this a little bit more. And you know what? With the low residue diet, there is a lot of that evidence is pointing to not just the aggravation that fiber has going through your intestines, but it's also the dramatic reduction in carbohydrate intake. It is the achievement usually of low-grade levels of ketosis. And so it's a multifactorial example or protocol that is used in and very successfully to manage one of the most devastating chronic diseases that we have, inflammatory bowel diseases. And so just kind of wanted us to tease this idea that it's not unusual and it's not unnatural to think about. Eating this amount of plants is unnatural. Engaging in this amount of agriculture is unnatural. Having economy is unnatural. So yeah, I just wanted to throw out just a little tickle more of evidence as to how important it is to consider lowering the amount of plant foods that you're eating. So I'll say it again. Plants are medicine and animals are food. And food is medicine. There we go. Low residue diet. Have fun, friends. So yeah, one of the things that I just shared, presentation that we did for a mental wellness session for a huge region in southwestern Ontario this morning, is that I think that this is one of the most respectful things that we could do for plants. So we could talk about plants all day long that dramatically reduce and lower the amount of inflammation in your nervous system, allowing it to function properly and allowing us to properly engage in cognitive behavioral therapy, have successes there, resiliency to traumas and pain tolerance when that inflammation is low. And so, yeah, it's super amazing then to say that, with those inflammations low, we need to stop, to remove the primary sources of inflammation, the root cause of it. Where is all of this inflammation coming from that is building and accumulating in our nervous system, causing anxiety and depression? A lot of it is coming from your gut. It's coming from mitochondrial dysfunction. It's coming from inability. It's coming from glucose control. And so this is what needs to be understood, is that we need to deal with the root cause. If you are just using the medicine that helps with your mental health directly, dropping the amount of inflammation that's in your nervous system, and then without dealing with the source problem, well, all of that inflammation is just going to reaccumulate, and you will be just as dependent on that mental health medicine as you would be on an anxiolytic or an antidepressant from the doctor. You're going to constantly need to be engaging with it, and I think that it is one of the most respectful things that you could do to plant medicine then, is to say, you know what? I'm going to look a little bit inward, and I'm going to do what I need to do to be able to deal with the root cause of this issue, my intestines, mitochondrial function, and inability to control my glucose levels, being probably three of the most primary sources of chronic systemic inflammation that is generating and driving every chronic degenerative disease, including the aging process itself. So it's the most respectful thing that we could do to our medicine, is to say, what other cultural components do I need to engage with? A culturally appropriate diet and nutrition. Well, this is standard of care in inflammatory bowel disease in the form of a low residue diet. You have intermittent fasting that is becoming standard of care in oncology in some countries, and hopefully soon in Canada and the US. And then you have, culturally appropriate exercise. You have all of these other cultural components that we need to be in constant engagement with. And to utilize only medicine is not only myopic and limited, but it is, I think, disrespectful to the plant for you to be that reliant on it, to be constantly depending on it. So then, yeah, understanding that the opportunity we have to look inward is really good for our opportunity to be able to deal with anxieties and depressions and chronic diseases, but also it's also important for us to be responsible in that way for the plants themselves. And so if we want to thrive and we want our medicines to thrive, there needs to be an incorporation or inclusion of culture entirely. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes to share with you guys, just to peer into how normal it should be and is for us to be considering something like a low residue diet, which would be very consistent with an ancestral diet that is made up almost exclusively of animal products. It's not so far-fetched for us to think about this when these protocols are becoming standard of care, and when these protocols have been and are very well studied and successful in that. So yeah, Chumigach for listening. Listen, a little just a little blast, where my mind's at, and in and about our various presentations throughout the day. Just take a couple seconds and share with everybody these little tidbits. So, chumigats, bama.